I said, all right, I'm staying home because it is brick. It is brick outside. And tomorrow I have other things to deal with. Friday night we'll be back in the studio, and then I think that this ridiculous frigid spell that has gripped the whole nation should be done. Again, I'm not bitter about the cold. Yes, I am. I'm not bitter about the snow. Yes, I am. I don't like the cold either, but without snow, it's ridiculous. Louisiana, and I got messages from a handful of our friends in Louisiana. I got pictures from a handful, messages from more. I got a FaceTime today from Tracy Beans because she and everybody in her house are outside shoveling. They got 6 inches of snow in Myrtle Beach. And of course, nobody has any snow shovels out there, so they're shoveling snow with spade shovels and all that stuff. I'm just like, all right, I'm pulling, and here I am pulling Aurora across the front lawn on whatever's left of the sprinkling, the Parmesan cheese sprinkling that we got on Sunday night. Aurora's like, can we go outside in the snow? I'm like, all right. There I am with the rig that I made, strapped to her little snow disc, and I'm pulling her across several front lawns, and she's loving it, which is all that matters. But again, Daddy was not able to use his snow machine. I am masterful. I am masterful at wielding this snow machine. So that's what we tonight. We're going to just be hanging out. I am going to be calling up Taylor Johnatakis in a few minutes because I want a redo. And as he said, Frank, I'm in the sticks right now in Missouri. But tomorrow I'm going to be closer to some urban areas. The data connection is going to be a lot better. All I had was Wi-Fi last night, and you know how that is. You can have full Wi-Fi and it's still choppy. It's just it's not the same. So I got that going on. So I'll keep you up to date. That call should be going off hopefully without a hitch in the next couple of minutes, and then the rest of the evening is just what it is on this cold January 22nd, 2025. And I think that Jay Gulanello actually might join us in studio on Friday night because we might talk a little Antarctica. But what we're going to crack open in the second half tonight is going to take at least a couple of more sessions of conversation because there's so many ways to approach this one. And that is the Project Stargate thing, which again, we'll talk about in the second hour, especially the people who are involved in it. We were just talking about Larry Ellison the other night because Oracle came up with TikTok. And now here we are again. And a little bit on Silk Road as well, because Ross Ulbricht got pardoned. And I wonder what some of your thoughts are with Mr. Ulbricht. And we'll go through some of the details, and I'll get some of your opinions because it's a name that has been relevant on the internet. A lot of petitions to have him released from prison. I think he got a couple of life sentences plus 40. And a lot of petitions to release him from prison all over the internet over the last dozen years or so. So I'd really like to just throw that out there and see what everybody's thinking and feeling. It's just finding little pockets for your calls. And I think that we should be able to do it because we're a crafty bunch. We really are. We really, really are. Okay, so with that being said, into the grab bag we go. A brief one at that. Where are we at? Here we go. All right, grab bag. First one up. No, this one is from Mexico. That's where it's from. Hold on, let me get her up on screen. We got a little bit of something from the lady president down there. President Sheinbaum. The Mexican President Sheinbaum calls for cool head as Trump sends the peso tumbling. It's tumbling into the sea. President Claudia Sheinbaum called for cool heads to prevail after Donald Trump's vow to impose hefty tariffs sent the country's currency tumbling on fears that Mexico will become a target of his administration. A target? That's the way you want to say it? Okay. On his first day in the White House, I guess anybody that's not America is a target. On his first day in the White House, Trump renewed his pledge to slap a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada for their goods, saying that he may do so as soon as February 1st if the countries do not move to clamp down on migration and drugs. He also signed a raft of orders on immigration, declared an emergency on the southern border, and pledged to designate Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. Sheinbaum responded on Tuesday as the aggressive day one moves from Washington caused the peso to weaken as much as 1.4%. It later trimmed losses to around 0.6%, still by far the worst performer in the emerging markets. She warned that Trump administration warned them against interventions in her nation's territory and pledged support for Mexican citizens who may face deportation. Mexican citizens who may face deportation? Like, what does that mean? What? Why would Mexican citizens have to be deported if they broke into the United States and are setting up shop there illegally without going through ports of entry? Oh, you pledge your support for them? What are they worth? They're sympathetic characters? Sheinbaum avoided a direct rebuke of the proposed tariffs, saying only that the decree Trump signed include preparations for the 2026 review of the North American Free Trade Agreement, known as USMCA. It's important to always keep cool head and refer to the signed orders beyond the actual rhetoric. That's what counts before the law, strictly speak. Well, I'm sorry, Madam Sheinbaum, but perhaps it's time that you have an economy that's based on something a little bit more than vampirism, and to hell with it. I don't care about anybody's rebukes anymore. I hope you don't either. That's all done. That's all done with. Over in Philadelphia, another sad sight, Mayor Cheryl Parker wanted to make sure that everybody was cheering on the Eagles in what is going to be a really, if you are an NFC East fan, if you're a fan of any of the teams in the NFC East, if you're a Giants fan even, if you're a Cowboys fan like me, unfortunately, the NFC Championship game is one that is worthy of unlimited amounts of vomit between the Eagles and the former Redskins. There'll always still be the Redskins, but now they're just some neutered marketing. I don't know, some abortion. But they are a pretty good team, and they got to the NFC championship game. And I guess the mayor over here in Philadelphia wants to give them a little bit of an edge, and she's leading everybody in an Eagles chant, but of course does not know, maybe she never learned, how to spell Eagles.
Let me hear you all say E-L-G-L-E-S, Eagles! Let's go, birds!
Yes, let's go. Hopefully they can fly better, they can spell. But that's Philadelphia. Born and raised. Anyway, I have a studies finds over here that I thought was pretty interesting. Perhaps you have a little something you could share with me on this. There is a study that says a third of Americans say that their partner acts like a baby when they're sick. Yeah, well, so what? Some of us deserve to act like a damn baby. Although I acted pretty manly this last sickness. I just did my duty. And I drowned myself in ivermectin. And I got it. That's it. I don't know. I hate being sick. But Aurora is so accommodating. Aurora is amazing. She's going to she takes care of me so well. Fantastic. She and Lauren are like a tag team from heaven. Average adult feels healthy just 16 days a month during the winter, survey shows. You know, I tend to agree, but I don't know if I think it's really just people laugh at the whole seasonal effectiveness disorder or whatever the hell it is. SAD. Oh, really weird acronym. But then I guess it is true to form. I think that's mostly what it is. I get very tired of the winter very quickly after after all of the holidays pass. And it is a long trek sometimes from January to March. But, you know, all that being said, January is almost over. A recent nationwide survey reveals that Americans spend less than half of their winter days feeling completely healthy, with respondents reporting to feeling 100% or fit for only 16 days during an average winter month. The study, which surveys 2,000 Americans, included 951 cohabitating partners, offering a revealing glimpse into how illness affects relationships and daily life during colder months. Well, as far as everybody acting like a baby, we could leave that one out. But the research conducted by Talker Research and commissioned by ZipFizz in December of 24 found that lack of energy is the most common winter health complaint, affecting 58% of respondents. Traditional cold symptoms followed, with 42% experiencing coughing, 40% sore throats, 38% dealing with congestion. Man, sore throats suck. You can give me a low-grade fever whenever the hell you want over a sore throat. Oh my gosh. Anytime I feel a tickle, it is that gigantic 30-minute zinc throat lozenge right down my gullet. Frank, you're supposed to suck on it. Yeah, well. Anyway, moving on. That could get weird. So let's go and wrap this one up. And on the other side of the intro, we're going to make a call to a friend. And hopefully this time it goes a lot better than last night, and we're starting from the beginning, ladies and gentlemen, because there's so much interesting. There's so many things I want to know from Taylor Johnatakis, and because as you can see, it's all over the place right now. The prisons are opening up, people are being let out, and the response from the media: I want them in prison, I want them in jail. State district attorneys. They are, some of them have made ridiculous statements about how there should be state charges for people who are being released and pardoned from jail. I don't understand that. Isn't that double jeopardy? Isn't that double jeopardy? Isn't that a constitution? I mean, seriously, isn't that a violation of constitutional rights when all of a sudden state district's attorney are going after people because they just want them back in jail for no other, that's just because their personal desire to have people in jail. And how can you charge somebody whose only jurisdiction is state matters with crimes that were committed outside of the state that were already adjudicated? But these people are just nuts, and they always show you every day why they lost and why they need to be absolutely crushed, pulverized in the most figurative way, of course, and symbolic of ways. But they're nuts. They're going nuts, and they continue to show everybody why they're out of their minds. I saw, the Lakeland Riley, the girl from what was it, Georgia or somewhere, that got killed by an illegal immigrant. There's a bill that's up for a vote in the House, and you had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez trying to resist it, and the resistance that they put up is now so feeble that they're there complaining that even the accusation of a crime can send an illegal alien packing. You say, what? Even the accusation of a crime? Well, first of all, if anybody knows where an illegal alien is, they should be gone, period. That's number one. So every position is so weak. So weak. And it's just so deeply rooted in their personal desire to either destroy one thing or another. Even the things that they try to create have to be done through destruction. Whatever world they're trying to create has to be done on the heels of the destruction of our federalist system, whatever is left of it. It's just so weak, and I know it can't be playing right with people. It can't be. That even now there is just no backing off. Anyhow, to hell with them all. Let's get back onto some other shit, and I'll see you on the other side of the intro. So, ladies and gentlemen, be well, stay very warm wherever the hell you are, and we'll be back in a flash.
Hey, Paulie! Let me have some wine. Paulie! More wine.
Music, please. Ah, you look terrific on the floor.
What are you, a dance judge or something? How about you got to do it? Go take a walk around the neighborhood. Do your job.
can't stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's
Okay, everybody. What it is ain't exactly obvious. Thank you for being here on this this Wednesday evening at 7:15. It is cold, cold, cold. I'm wearing a sweater. I'm wearing just a plain old sweater, my friends, and it has done the trick. And I have a heating pad that Lauren bought me for Christmas last year, 2023, I should say, under my feet. That's what I work with during the winter. It's perfect. It can go up to 150 degrees. The highest I put it on is a 105, or else I'll take my skin off. It doesn't matter if you have socks on. You will burn. You're done. But welcome to the show, and I want to get right to it because there's a lot to talk about with our friend Taylor. And he is going to be joining us from Missouri, but with a little bit more data coverage tonight. Let's give him a call.
Hey, Frank.
Oh, Taylor, it's so good to hear from you.
Oh, thank you for calling me back, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, there's no way in hell that we'd let that go. Of course. As soon as the show was over last night, I was right in your inbox and said, okay, well, let's just let's figure this out for tomorrow. And here we are. Now, let's just start from the beginning, because I was the only real contact after last January was our mutual contact and friend, Bryce. And, throughout the year, I gave an email here, there. Any word from you? Are you, is there any way to reach you? Do you still have the same kind of access? And that kind of dried up. But he was the first one that I emailed when I heard that these pardons were going to be signed. I wanted to know if there's any news in your camp. And as soon as I responded, I wrote to him. He wrote back about 10 minutes later and said that he had heard from your wife and said that the prison was processing your paperwork, and they called the case manager to come in to the prison and that they'd have you out by midnight. What time were you officially released on Inauguration Day?
It was about 11:30 p.m.
Wow.
And I do not think the jail was slow rolling it. It was Martin Luther King Day, so it's a federal holiday. So all the normal workers that would do that kind of stuff were home all day. So they had to come in on a holiday after hours to do it. And then it wasn't, of course, the A team. It was like the C team, right? And so it just took them a while to do the paperwork. And of course they had to they must have got some notification from DC that paperwork was incoming, because they came up right after, like 30 minutes after the pardon. They came up and, hey, you've been pardoned. We're going to get your paperwork. As soon as we have the paperwork and process it, we'll get you out by midnight tonight. That's what the executive order said. So, I mean, we were just kind of like, yes, we're giving away all of our stuff, giving, food to other guys and gathering things up. And we were just like, we're going home. It was really awesome.
It does.
When we left, there was a couple dozen inmates, which, was quite a few on our housing unit floor that we were on. And they were lining up in the halls. And as we walked out, they were just shouting, Trump, 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 Trump. So it was pretty fun. All colors, all races. Everybody loves Trump in prison.
See, I was thinking about this, and I guess we have to talk more about that. Just things that you saw and what you learned, what you took away from that time there, aside from the fact that there must have been real lows during that time. But let's just go back to last January, because as I was starting to say last night, when we had spoken, you were awaiting sentencing. We had about 5 minutes that we were trying to get in with each other, get as much information out to the public. And then you were cut off in mid-sentence toward the end of the call. And as I said last night, again, it was a very, very heavy phone call for me because the gravity of the situation was evident. And I think everybody watching the show was experiencing the same kind of thing. Now, what followed that call was your sentencing. So I would love for you to tell us about that, because of course they threw the book at you, And what happened there?
Okay, so when we had that phone call, for whatever reason, I couldn't call you. My numbers were limited, and I wasn't aware of that. So we ended up having our mutual friend Bryce do like a three-way phone call, which is technically against jail rules. However, people do it all the time, like all the time. And so, because they're monitoring the call, so I mean, do something stupid and say something stupid, they dare you, right? Because they're monitoring. So, and anyways, while we were on the call, I don't know if you remember, but they came and pulled me out of my cell, which then put me in a really awkward position because I was standing in the hallway making that phone call instead of in my room with the tablet like I was, and I couldn't get back in my room to get your phone number or to get Bryce's phone number to call him back. So that was really unusual. That never happened to me except for while I was on that phone call. Well, it popped back up again at sentencing because they referenced that call I made to you as how I had subverted the prison rules and that I was, essentially a criminally minded person and that, I had made that phone call. And on that phone call, I said, all I did was push a gate and they want to put me in prison for 11 years, which is what they were asking. The prosecution was asking for 109 months. They wanted an upward variance from my guidelines, which my guidelines would have been up there, and they were up there when you and I talked on the phone, but there was an appeal that went through that caused them to have to move the guidelines down. But what they did in order to really throw the book at me, because based on the way that the appeal happened, it was the Larry Brock versus USA or USA versus Larry Brock appeal. They couldn't add enhancements to the obstruction of Congress charge. So what they did for me was they separated out obstruction of Congress and my 111A assault, which is a nonviolent assault. It's basically impeding with their duties, okay? And they said they added enhancements to take it from like 24 months up to the 70 to 87 month range. One of the enhancements they gave me was a firearm enhancement. And then they went on and described a bicycle rack. So the Department of Justice decided that the bicycle rack was the equivalent of a firearm in the pursuit of a crime.
This is incredible.
And that got me, that bumped me up like 4 points, I believe. And then they added in an obstruction of justice enhancement, and they added in a couple other enhancements. And that's why they were able to get me into that really higher guideline range. My co-defendants who had been sentenced prior, when the government was asking 109 months, the judge kind of showed them mercy and gave them 6 and 8, which, by the way, that's not mercy. But, on paper, it might look that way. Okay.
You said, wait, you said gave them 6 to 8 months or 68?
6 years and 8 years.
Wow.
And so I fit right in the middle, 6, 7, 8. And they would have, if the judge could have justified going outside the guideline range, I'm sure he would have. But he couldn't justify anything other than the max on my, guidelines with a firearm enhancement. And that's just one of those things where when people talk about the J6 cases, you can get off in the weeds on any particular topic, due process violations. You can talk. My judge told me before I had a single juror or anything at a pretrial hearing, he said, Mr. Johnatakis, you're going to go to prison for a long time when this is all over. And there was audible gasps in the room because a judge can't tell someone he's going to go to prison before a single piece of evidence against him has been given, right? That's the judge prejudging. At one point, I was trying to get the judge to count the number of days that had elapsed since I had stopped waiving my Speedy Trial Act. And I go, Judge, who has a duty to determine how many days have elapsed? He goes, I do. Judge, are you and this is pretty much exactly what I said in trial. Judge, are you going to make the determination as to how many days have elapsed since I reserved all my rights with explicit reservation without prejudice, which is how I explicitly did not waive my right to a speedy trial. And the judge goes, that's a matter for appeals, Mr. Johnatakis. You can take it up with appeals. And then I responded the next day, Judge, is it the custom of your courtroom to tell a criminal defendant that, or is it the custom of your courtroom to leave for another court to correct the known errors in your own courtroom? The judge wasn't very happy with that. But again, when you bring these things up, the judge doesn't really want to do anything except move the case forward, which is normally their duty. But at the same time, they also have a duty to protect the Constitution, to protect the Bill of Rights, and to protect the criminal defendant from overreach of government. They're supposed to be this crown jewel of our nation, this independent judiciary. But what I observed firsthand was the judiciary in this case was kind of in the tank with the prosecution. It's no secret that courthouse sits kitty corner from the Capitol building. So on January 6th, I'm sure that courthouse was surrounded by the millions of people walking down the roads. They probably were obstructed themselves from getting home on time and all that kind of stuff. The workers and the courthouse and the judges themselves were essentially crime victims, right? Like, I mean, it's like, how is it possible that we're being adjudicated in this building? If they had done a mass motion to move it into like Virginia or something like that, it would have, maybe we could have had a semblance of, our rights being vindicated.
No,
but
they wanted you to be thrown completely into the meat grinder. And what you're describing there is so sickening to me, because it's one thing to say, okay, well, this judge is an activist. He's out there. They are many of them. We've seen it. We've seen them forcing people to make declarations and renouncing Donald Trump. They forcing people to renounce this and that, to really make fools of them and have them almost like beg for mercy. On the other hand, what you're describing with the way that you were sentenced and the enhancements and all that for a non-firearm inanimate object to be classified as a firearm in an enhancement for sentencing, just to show how obsessive the Department of Justice was in keeping an army of weasels dedicated to making sure that people were completely screwed for sometimes decades, for no other reason than to show or to make some kind of a play to the public that something serious had happened, when obviously nothing really serious had happened. There was a gigantic exaggeration on top of a provocateur event. I mean, why else would you have to say that a bike rack was a firearm if it wasn't a complete sham? This is so angering to me, especially since we're paying for this whole thing, and of course we're paying for this weaponization, and the weapon is turned in on us. This is it's disgusting.
And it's it goes like, there were guys that had deadly weapon enhancements for a water bottle that got thrown. I mean, it borders on the absurd, right? So it's one of those things where I didn't argue my case in court. Okay, I saw no point in going up there and trying to justify my actions, because at this point, by the time I got to trial, there's like 400 or 500 people that'd been convicted. You could just see the writing on the wall. So my objective was just to go in there like a man, accept everything they said, and just try to get to the end while maintaining my rights, right? Because if people fought and died for things like your right to due process and your right to a speedy trial, which is included in the Bill of Rights, and you know what I mean? Like, when you get into court, the first thing you do is you waive your right to free speech, and you hire someone to speak for you. Then you waive your right to a speedy trial, and then you waive your right to privacy, and then you waive your right to self-defense, and you waive your right. So people go fight and die so we can have these rights. And the moment we get into a court situation, the first thing we do is we waive all of our rights when you need them most. So my only objective was to go in there and just simply stand on my rights. There's a maxim of law that says, he who stands on his rights injures no one. And so my objective was simply to stand on my rights. And if in fact there was an injured party, if there was an officer that I assaulted, I hurt, I wanted to be able to, as a man, simply apologize for my role in the events that day. And I was successful in doing that. There were no criminal impact, victim impact statements read at my sentencing. What there was my rewrite of Thomas Paine's Common Sense Applied Today, where I compared the city of District of Columbia to London in the 1700s, and that we have a very similar relationship, us Americans out in the hinterlands, right, as compared to the District of Columbia, where they give us regulations and we give them taxes. Okay, and so they did not like that I made that comparison. Right. There were a couple other of my essays and things that I wrote while I was incarcerated that they included as exhibits as to why I needed the book thrown at me. And most people, when they read, I'm sure 90% of this audience, if you go read the exhibits that they put in my sentencing, you'll agree with them. They were using things like 1776 to demonstrate how you're a violent domestic extremist who wants to overthrow the government. Well, I'm sorry, the American spirit was born in this element that is we the people literally versus the inanimate object of the government. You serve us, we don't serve you, right? I mean, the whole point of the book Les Miserables is that when you make the law your God and you try to make nobody is above the law, well, then who is? The law cannot be our God. There has to be someone running that has a moral, sentient conscience human element, which is why our founding fathers put a president in charge, an executive, and gave him the pardon power as a check against the legislature when they write bad law, and as a check against the judiciary when they don't defend the rights of citizens. Right? That is where you have the people as their sole representative as the president, who has the ability to check the entire government with that pardon power. Like, we should never want to live under the law, because otherwise you end up in a situation like in the book Les Miserables, where you can never satisfy the law in a moral manner. And that's the whole point of that book, right? Where the inspector has to kill himself because he can't break the law without, he can't show mercy without breaking the law.
Yes.
And so we have to, as American people, start to understand that we must stand on our rights. I don't want to go back. I know other people are going to feel different, and there's a role for this. But what happened on January 6th, when you get out into the weeds on everybody's individual actions, this, that, or the other, you miss the bigger point. There was an election that was not properly adjudicated. So where do you leave the people's remedy? Okay, we're going to assemble and protest, and our congressmen and representatives on the inside are going to talk about election irregularities and send it back to the legislatures of the states, which is the constitutional procedure when you have issues, in order to decide the matter. Okay. When that didn't happen, what happened was, as everybody knows, a pipe bomb, a security incident happened, which was the pipe bomb was discovered. And then that caused Congress to be evacuated and for them to stop the proceedings just as they were about to get to Arizona. Right. And then you had the Ray Epps incident where he pushed past the barricade, and then Trump's still talking. And by the time Trump was done talking and we made it to the Capitol grounds, Congress was already obstructed. Stuff was already going on. You add in the provocateurs and everything. It feels like a giant entrapment bear trap.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So what I loved about what Donald Trump did with the pardons was he looked at it from a big picture standpoint and went, they shouldn't have even had to be there. Had it not been for the 2020 election and how that went down, had it not been for the court cases that were dismissed on standing grounds instead of on merit or on evidence, had it not been for the representatives, not going along with the plan, had it not been for the security incident with the pipe bomb, which, by the way, we've never gotten to the bottom of,
never,
right, which was the real catalyst, had it not been for all of that, even the most violent person on January 6th wouldn't have even been there. And then you throw in the fact that those of us that are criminal defendants that had access to discovery, which it was, of course, under seal, so the world couldn't see it, we would look at things and go, okay, well, this person right here who's got his arm up chanting USA, USA, he's been indicted. But who are these people climbing the walls behind him that we see on news all day long? I've never heard of who climbed a wall that was indicted. Who are those people? But the guy at the bottom that's chanting USA, USA, he's been indicted.
Yeah.
Right? And you see so many instances of that where it's like, who's this guy that's jumping in with the cops? And sure, the three people behind him all have been indicted, but who's the guy right there? Right? And it's like, I'm not saying that every instance is like that, because there were some real, in fairness to my J6 brothers, there were some boneheads that day, and they know who they are. Right? But at the same time, it's like this big picture is such a mess when people want to say, well, we saw the video images, we saw this. Listen, I've watched the news so many times where you have images of people throwing things at cops, and if you pause the video and look at their feet, you'll see the body of Rosen Boylan. They're standing over a dead woman trying to defend a dead woman that they were trying to get medical attention to. That's why they're engaging with the cops in that manner. Not because they're attacking them, because they're trying to defend her. But you don't hear that name very often, and you don't see them zoom in on her body, but you'll see them zoom in on somebody throwing something. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm very, very happy that President Trump did it the way he did it, is because he basically said, look, enough's enough, right? We could go on for decades and decades trying to adjudicate every little thing, but at the end of the day, it's over.
It is. And in many such cases there too, you create all this chaos, and of course the media is there to receive it. There's stand down orders that were given to some. There's so many pieces that you can put together, and like you said, in the mix, some boneheads. But really, the worst of the behavior there warrant even 4 years in prison, let alone the decades that they've been given to people. I mean, it's incredible. I have so much more to ask him, and it's also just incredible too how obsessive these people were in at the DOJ to, again, like you were saying before, include in the sentencing the fact that you were on this show and that your presence on this show and what you did to take the call was evidence of criminal intent. That is not a feather in my cap that, in all the places that I wish that quite frankly can get a little bit of a little bit.
It wasn't on your bingo card? Is that what you're saying?
No, no.
Yes, quite frankly, you now have a role in January 6th.
I know.
You are cited and you are on the record in the District of Columbia with involvement with it. So as a sympathizer. So yeah.
Well,
but I don't know how much longer we have, but I did.
No, we're going to keep going. I have a lot. We'll go as long. Well, how much time do you have? Because I have questions. I want to ask you about 2024. I want to ask you about everything right now. I have so much to do. I can bring.
So let me tell you about one thing that in all of January 6th, and I hope that other people that are involved with January 6th, the best revenge is a life well lived. Let's not become the thing that we hate, right? We don't want to go through this cycle of victim oppressor over and over again. We need to rise above it. And that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be accountability. There absolutely should be. But I get really nervous with the chance of justice and vengeance and, all this kind of thing. There needs to be accountability. Let the process play out. There's people that feel inspired to those roles. But for the most part, I think January 6th defendants need to take this opportunity to have a good live life, right? Don't become the thing that they accused you of being. Don't become an enemy to the government. Don't become an enemy to the people. And so my wife and I, in the process of doing this, did a lot of self-reflection, because you go through this situation where I've got 5 children at home. We're a homeschool family. We've homeschooled our children forever. We've never put them in public school because we believe we have to be the solution to the problems in the world. So if there's a problem with the school district, then we'll educate our own children. We'll take the burden on ourselves. If we see somebody in need, then we're going, and rather than, go clamor for welfare, we're going to do what we can to help our neighbor in need. To always look at, I am the solution to the problems that I see around me, and I can control our behavior. So one of the things we saw going through this was, my wife's looking at the budget because all of a sudden my income's completely gone. And she's like, what do I cut? My son's swimming, my daughter's guitar, my other son's basketball, the other little kid's soccer league, right? What do we cut? I mean, they love those things. That's how they get social outreach as homeschool kids. And so we saw that, when someone gets incarcerated, it's the families that go through it with them, and especially the children. And when you look at the generational, and that was the other thing I saw too with inmates, was the generational aspect of incarceration. Just like the military runs in families, incarceration runs in families. One time I was standing in a prison hallway with 8 other men. We were stuck on a move, and I started talking about intergenerational incarceration. And of the 8 men, I said, how many of you guys have a dad, whose dad was in prison? All 8 of them raised their hands. And the 2 that were old enough to have kids that were over 18, their sons were already in prison. So you had 3 generations already gone to prison. And it was like, and everyone else was at least on their second. A couple of them were like, yeah, my grandpa went to prison too. So we have a real problem. And the reason is it's the degradation of the family, taking the father out of the home, and all those kind of problems. But we can start right now to help the kids. So my wife started a nonprofit called Left Behind and Without, which people can find at leftbehindandwithout.org, where she helps children of incarcerated parents get all their sports programs, guitar lessons, drama programs, summer camps, any type of after-school activity that can provide positive influence, something for them to do with their time other than join a gang, right? And positive adult role models. She's helping them. And currently there's about 80 kids enrolled in the program. It's not a J6 program. I think there's only actually one J6 family that's taken advantage of it so far, but she's helping 80 families with incarcerated parents with these programs. So, we're trying to say, look, through this experience, despite all the things that happened, we want to make a difference. Now that I've been in prison and I see up close and personal the problems that our society face, it starts with the kids. We have to stop the intergenerational incarceration problem. And that means the kids need help. And it's 1 in 28 children in the United States has an incarcerated parent. That means on average, 1 kid in every single classroom in America has an incarcerated parent. That kid's at risk. They need help.
After the show, I'd love for you to give me that URL again so I can share it and put it in the description of the episode. But while we're on this topic, before I get back to just your experience of, your 2024 experience, which is vastly different than, we were all on a roller coaster ride in 2024. We knew that was going to be top billing, on such a consequential election, but you were in prison with your life hanging in the balance. And this election meant a lot more to you than it did even to us. So I want to get around to that in a second. But since we're talking about prison and we're talking about intergenerational, I'd like to hear your thoughts on another aspect of January 6th. And it's not shocking, of course, that a government would target its own citizens to one end or another, as we know that ours has a tendency and actually a proclivity to do. But one of the more disturbing aspects of this whole thing is how Americans were turned in. How many Americans who were in prison with people like you were turned in by members of their own family? And we were covering these stories as they were coming out all throughout 2021 and into 2022. But here, for example, I found a tweet from another J6 detainee. His name is John Cameron. He wrote this on Twitter the other day, just yesterday, actually. Here's what he said. He said, "I am a J6er. My father's stepson reported me to the FBI. About half of the J6ers were turned in by family." Now, you can say that a father's stepson is not really family, but to some people, that is family. You can know a stepbrother or a stepson or whatever the hell it is for decades and be, as tight as blood. But we've seen blood and turn against blood. Some could call this anecdotal, but we also, like I said, covered quite a few news stories to support that this was going on. What's your experience with people that were in there for the same thing as you? Were any of them turned in by family as well?
Yes, absolutely. Lots. The FBI ran a campaign to basically, turn in people that on Facebook. If anybody made a J6 post on Facebook or posted a picture on Facebook, I promise you, if you go through their discovery, there were people sending tips to the FBI. I think I alone had like 32 tips turned in on me from social media. People I didn't know. Some of them were false tips, like, "Oh, this guy lives in California around the corner. He's a huge prepper with guns." And then they go, "Not this, not Taylor." But yeah, the FBI ran a massive campaign to get Americans to turn in other Americans for having attended January 6th. And then they would go through and then they would decide if they had evidence based on whatever data they were piling through to charge you. So no, it was a huge problem. And there were many high profile families, like the Reffitt family, that had a son that turned his father, and his son actually wore a wire prior to January 6th on his dad, which is, again, another one of those things where, they use the kids to get to the parents. And if anybody's familiar with the way that Marxist governments and Marxist operations happen, that's one of the things they do, is they get the parents, but they get the children to disregard their parents and to not honor them, which is one of the reasons I believe why Moses was smart enough to say, "Honor thy parents that thy days may be long upon the land." Honor thy father and thy mother that thy days may be long upon the land. This idea that you have to care for your parents just like they care for you. And Marxist governments want to break up that relationship. And so absolutely they incentivized families to turn on each other. It's one thing if you've got a family member that commits a serious crime, right? But it's another thing when in the January 6th situation, where do we draw the line? It's very sad to think that they did that, and they encouraged it. They encouraged Americans to turn in other Americans purely for political ire.
That's the whole point. That's where the messaging really comes in. The diabolical nature of the messaging from the media, which of course is hand in glove with the intelligence services, which of course was, on the ground, choreographing so much of this, and it all became media fodder. That's the really the squawk box of this entire mechanism here. And what people were hearing constantly was attack, insurrection, worst thing to happen since the War of 1812. They actually, they skipped over 9/11 and the World Wars and the Civil War and went to 1812. So when you think about the very impressionable people, especially who are young, who are going to school, who want to are suddenly put in a position where they want to show who they're loyal to. A lot of them, and it's sad because many of them were proud to flex that they were strong enough to send their father or their mother or their grandparents to prison for what I guess what they were made to believe was the worst attack on American sovereignty since forever. So that's just it's a sick, very, very sick aspect of everything that we were talking. There's so many sick aspects, but
one of the things I've had to look in the mirror at myself is we have to be very, very careful about our rhetoric. We have the right to free speech, and we can say all kinds of incendiary things and not really mean it, right? But when you're put in a situation like I was and like other January 6ers were, all of a sudden those little throwaway comments on Twitter, like for example, during the riots of 2020, DC is burning down, and I allegedly posted. I actually don't think I posted this because I think they had a fake vanity name, and there's a whole backstory. But they used it trial. I don't remember doing it, but they said I did it. I sent out a tweet that said "Burn down DC" in response to DC being burned down, right? So they took that tweet from the summer of 2020 and they showed it to a jury, and they were like, "Look, this guy wanted to come to the District of Columbia, and he wanted to have the city burned down." So you have to be really careful. I made some other comments too in videos I made where I referenced, Ashley Babbitt being killed, and that this might be the start of a civil war and things like that. And in my mind, I was talking to my podcast audience. I don't know if you know this or not, Frank, but I used to have a podcast called Peasant's Perspective. And anyways, so I thought I was talking to my podcast audience, kind of making a comparison. And I also said that if the politicians came outside of the Capitol, we would have killed them. And there's an old, when I was a long time ago, a preacher basically told me, don't ever tell the congregation to repent, say we need to repent, right? Always try to include yourself so you don't look sanctimonious and judgmental. And so I've always tried to, when I should have said, if the politicians would have come outside, they would have killed them. Because there were some pretty angry people that day in the crowd. Fair enough? Yes. I wouldn't have done it, but I've said well, they took that and they're like, look, he was murderous, and it's like, no, I was like walking away very sad. I cried about Ashley Babbitt dying, and because I found out while I was on Capitol grounds about that. I was like, that's really not what I was saying, but again, I also knew that politicians didn't come outside, so they were safe, right? So I felt like I could say that rhetorical statement. And so we have to be really careful just about sometimes when we lash out and say things that rhetoric gets amped up. And it's not just a problem with January 6th. It's a problem all across the board. Some people take things seriously. They don't know how to just let something go.
Well, you
never know when that stuff will come back to bite you.
It's also a very contemporary thing right now, and a unique thing at that, where ordinary people who if they get together at a party or at a bar or wherever the hell else, they usually when somebody goes and speaks in public, it's usually at a bar, but now you are shouting things. Listen, I know what I'm guilty of. No crimes, but hey, I get very passionate here every night. I express my hatred for the mutant government that stands in place of the ruins of a once republic. I don't find any of what goes on in this country as being legitimate, especially on a federal level. I'll never intend leading an armed revolt or want to do harm to anybody, but I'm going to call it as I see it. But the problem here is that there is a chilling effect. You want to talk about intergenerational effect of incarceration. There's an intergenerational effect, a chilling effect of self-censorship at this point, because we already have a couple of generations who have been raised on computers, internet connectivity, and how every little thing that we put out there, even emails, unsent drafts, whatever, there is a residue of every thought that we even thought to publish and didn't even send, that stayed inside. There's just a residue of it all over the place. And it's really hard for people to consider that. And I think that's just what we have to live with. But at the same time, At the same time, I guess everybody has to learn to talk like a seasoned broadcaster. To what you're saying.
Well, and I am not. I don't want to make the case for political correctness, right? I just simply think that people. It's just one of those things where recognize that what you say. Okay, I was sitting at the table during trial with my attorney, my standby counsel. And it's the attorney I've had all along. The court wouldn't let him go. It was kind of an interesting deal. So he flew out from Seattle to go to trial with me. And he's sitting there, and I turned to him and I said, are you going to call any witnesses? I wasn't going to call any witnesses, but I looked at him. I said, I might call you to the stand so you can testify to some stuff that we've talked about. And he looks at me and says, if you call me to the stand, I'll kill you. And I looked at him and I thought, you just threatened to kill me. It's funny because in this trial, they're using something that I said that I totally didn't mean either. Right? You just threatened me to kill me. If I had recorded that and I played it back and I was like, Judge, I need a restraining order from him. How many times do we make those kind of little throwaway like,
Taylor,
he wasn't going to do anything to me. But that's the kind of thing where it's like we all have to be, and I'm not making a case for censure. I don't even know why we're necessarily this far out in the weeds on this, but
to your point, we're only 24 hours removed from Elon Musk having another awkward autistic moment on stage. Now half of the country thinks that he gave a full-throated salute with Hitler and the Nazis in mind, and the other half going, well, that was weird. He shouldn't have done that. That looks, you want to talk about intent and what people who really have it out for you are willing to interpret something as being, and they may believe it as well, or they also may just believe that, they just gave us a gem. Let's take them down. Even though we know what they meant, let's just take them down. And that's just where we're at. We're in a place in our country where at the highest echelons of power and influence, there are just so many people who are acting in bad faith that it really, it makes you wonder just how far, we can go with acting civil toward each other. I got to ask you a couple more questions about just in general, the experience of the last year before, you have to go. I don't want to take too much time away from you and your family. You're just getting settled in. You're only like 72 hours out. But let's talk about 2024 from behind bars. I know you were all waiting with bated breath. I mean, we all were. But many people like you knew that the only way that you were going to be free from this hell was if Donald Trump won, because, there was no one else who had a shot at winning, at least in 2024. So, that could mean, all right, do I have to stay here for 4 to 8 more years until somebody else has a shot or whatever? How closely were you and everybody in your position following the news of the election throughout 24? And especially, I want you to talk about the assassination attempt, because it was almost all over in July.
We followed it very closely. I watched the news every single day. We started to have a little news club every day. We'd go and watch Laura Ingraham, because that was when we could reserve the TV to watch an hour of news. We'd wake up at 5 a.m. We'd turn on the news and we'd watch an hour and a half of Newsmax or Fox, or we even flip over to MSNBC sometimes when we just wanted the mental torture. And so we were following it very closely. You have very limited information in prison. You don't have any social media clearly. So everything you guys were seeing on Twitter, we weren't seeing. We were only seeing what was on some mainstream news outlet. So we were following it very closely. And with my background with a political science degree and just following politics my entire adult life, I was able to interpret a lot of what was going on. And we kind of had we were a group of inmates, large group, not just January 6ers, but others too were very interested in what was going to happen. And so we were following it extremely closely. I remember when the assassination happened, I was walking to the chow hall and an inmate passed me coming out of the chow hall, and he goes, "Hey, Donald Trump got shot at." And I just, "Got shot at?" "Yeah." And I thought, "Oh, they just shot at him. He's safe." And then someone else said, "No, I saw him get shot. He's got blood everywhere. He's shot in the head."
Oh.
And at that point, I'm like, "What?" So but I got to go. I'm like in line for the chow hall, right? So I walk into the chow hall and everybody's like, "Donald Trump got shot. Is he going to make it? Is he dead? There's blood." And someone's like, "No, I think he's okay." He put his hands up and pumped his hands. And so then I hurried up at 8 as fast as I could and ran back to the housing unit, and the news was on. Everybody was gathered around the news, and I was watching the replay of it. And when he put his hands up and went, "Fight, fight, fight," I just thought that people were walking out of the TV room, and as I'm walking in, and they're going, "You're going home, buddy. He just won the election right there. That is a badass."
Wow.
And other select words to follow, right? Like that is our guy right there. That guy right there. And it was, I mean, to think that we were a centimeter or less, millimeters away from this all being over. To think that I wasn't going to get out until 2030, 2029. It was hard. I never for 1 second from January 20th, 2021, when Joe Biden swore in, I never for 1 second doubted that Donald Trump would not run again. I never for 1 second doubted that if he ran again, he would make January 6th right, whatever that meant. It was long before he was talking about pardons or anything like that. But I knew that he would make it right because he knew. Everybody who followed it closely knew that there was something really fishy about January 6th, right? And I knew that for the sake of America, that he needed to come back and finish some of the business that he started. One time he said, "We've planted these seeds, but I need another 4 years to get them to really grow and take root." And I was like, he's going to come back and do it. And when he got shot, and they missed by a millimeter, I was like, this is the hand of providence. This is like George Washington running into battle and getting shot multiple times in the coat, but never having a bullet escape him. This man has been prepared his whole life to bridge the gap between left and right and to lead the world into a new age. And I just knew it in my soul. And I knew right then, no matter what, he was going to win. The question was always, how bad are they going to cheat? I am absolutely convinced that 2020 was a sham, right? And I think more and more people are seeing that clearly. Donald Trump knows that. Pam Bondi knows that, right? And so and then when Joe Biden had that disastrous debate, I called right after the debate, I went and called my wife, and I was like, "Honey, it's all over but the bleeding. Where I'm coming home, right? Like one way or the other, there's no way that I'm not going to get relief on appeals or something because his new Department of Justice isn't going to let this stand." And then, of course, they swapped out with Kamala Harris, and you could just see the media trying to puff up the sails to give her that space. And I just knew. I said, when you're in prison and you're with all these inmates, this is everybody. I remember I'd walk around the track and I'd ask an illegal immigrant who's 3 days away from being deported. Okay, tattoos all over his body, face, head, back, neck, toes, everything. Okay, illegal immigrant, cartel member. I go, "Hey, who do you think should win the election, Harris or Trump?" He goes, "Trump." And I go, "Aren't you getting deported?" He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "But Trump." He goes, "Trump's going to fix Mexico too." And I was like, they get it. They're coming here because their country is more messed up than ours, but they would love it if their country would be fixed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. They don't like the cold weather, right? And so I was like, that's incredible. And I saw that over and over and over again, right? It didn't matter where your background was. Everybody knew Trump was the guy to fix things. Trump helped out the incarcerated community with the First Step Act more than any other politician ever. They saw in him an ally, right? And I knew that if Trump was reaching into the prison and these people that the Democrats think that they have on lock, that the Democrats think they're serving, absolutely have no allegiance to the Democrat Party and see in Trump a new caricature, I was like, Americans are going to get it, right? And I just absolutely believe they would come through. I cannot be more grateful to Laura Trump and Paul Whatley, the other RNC chairman. Is that right?
Yeah.
Cannot be more. I am so grateful to those guys for putting together the 275,000 poll watcher volunteers that weren't around in 2020, for preemptive lawsuits to make sure that the rules were followed, whatever the rules were, for the attorneys that were on standby to make sure rules got followed the night of the election. I'm so grateful to people like Scott Pressler, who gave up 4 years to go and register people in Pennsylvania. I'm so grateful to all of those people because they continued the work of January 6th on into the 2024 election, and they made it happen. I wrote a post, a letter that I wrote out that was posted later at at my wife's website that talked about, even if I didn't get, I was asked by the chaplain one time, are you still going to support Trump even if he doesn't pardon you? And I was like, absolutely, because I care deeply about this country. I care deeply about the world that my 5 children are going to grow up in. And I wish that my grandparents had taken a stand before it got this far. But we have to stand up as a people and do something. And Donald Trump represents a populist set of policies that empower the individual to make their lives better, their families' lives better, their neighborhoods better, their communities, their cities, their counties, their states, and then the federal government, and in that order. And that is the way it should be. He empowers the individual with his policy, and the individuals of this country are what make it so great. And so even if Donald Trump hadn't have pardoned us, I would still absolutely support him, because there is life after this incarceration, and my children's life matters much more. And we don't want to continue down the road that we were walking. One of the greatest things I saw through this entire January 6th process was the overwhelming amount of support we had as a group and as individuals. The community came to our rescue financially. The community, including members of your audience who donated to my wife's Give Send Go. It's incredible help that was offered. We're struggling. Like someone asked me today, how much money you guys have? Oh, a couple dollars above zero, right? I mean, we are at a breath end, but every time something absolutely had to be paid, somebody made a donation that was just enough to cover the cell phone, just enough to cover the last bit of the house payment that we couldn't make, or whatever it was, right? Like, it was always just enough that the people provided, but especially the Chinese American community. The Chinese American community supported the January 6th defendants like you would not believe.
Really?
They know. I sat in visitation in District of Columbia, and I wrote letters back and forth with people who had fled to the United States during the Cultural Revolution in China, that lost family members to the Communist Party through political persecution. And they were terrified of the road that America was marching down. They know firsthand where we are at and what time it is. And they were absolutely behind us, and they were just terrified of where we were at, and they were huge supporters. The Chinese American community deserves the largest shout out for really knowing what time it is and being just adamant supporters of freedom and liberty and justice and all the American qualities. They came here escaping the most violent persecution in China decades ago, and even still today, right? And they sought refuge here, and to see their place of refuge going down that road, they were terrified because there's nowhere else to run.
Well, I was going to ask you, what your greatest lessons learned during your time in there were, but you just gave me so many. I mean, and again, not to say, not to diminish what the lowest of lows must have been for you. So, separated from your family, I would be. What few business trips I took away from home in the time that my daughter has been on the earth. I remember
when she was born, by the way.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you,
Aurora,
a 3-day weekend away from her is like hell when I can just drive on back if I wanted to. So to think about what you were going through and what you were facing, if like you said, if the winner was not recognized for a second election cycle in a row, because that's what we had going on here. And I had to imagine election night was a big celebration for you there behind bars, but then comes the 3 months between election night and inauguration day, which seems like a year. That's like 3 years unto itself. So I mean,
it was the longest 3 months ever. When Trump was elected, I stayed up to watch the news, and I got special permission from the guard to allow me to stay up in the TV room and watch the news. And pretty much all but one or two other people went to bed. The other January 6er that I was housed with went to bed. He was so nervous. He just couldn't take it. He's like, I got to go to bed. I'll wake up. We'll find out in the morning. And when he won, we were actually in count, and I was listening to the TV on my radio in the room getting counted at I don't know, midnight, 3 a.m, whatever it was. I can't remember now. but everybody was asleep, and I woke them up and I said, Trump just won. And I haven't actually gotten emotional since I've gotten out, to be completely honest. But he and I embraced each other. In prison, you can be completely surrounded by people and feel totally alone. You only get a 10-minute phone call home a day. The mail's inconsistent, and it's limited in what you can do. The emails are monitored, and there's huge time delays in the emails coming and going and stuff like that. So you can just be sitting there completely surrounded by people, just absolutely alone. And for he and I to just embrace each other and just be like, he won. It was an incredible moment that I will never forget. And then the next month and a half, was it 77 days or whatever it was like a countdown.
Yeah.
And we were just hoping for his safety, obviously super concerned about that, all the way up until he put his hand on the Bible. It was just like, actually, he didn't put his hand on the Bible.
Yeah, he missed that part.
Yeah, well, they were kind of rushed it. They were running a little behind schedule. But all the way up until that moment, it was like, is this really going to happen? Because so many people had said, they're never going to let him swear in. They're going to do something. But the overwhelming win that he had, the people coming behind him, it was undeniable. And clearly he came in. Then we were waiting, right? He said he was going to, in the Time Magazine article, said he was going to do something about the January 6ers 9 minutes. We were waiting and waiting and waiting. And that 10 hours until he finally signed the executive order was the longest 9 minutes of my life.
Well, it's yeah. I was wondering about that too. I was like, why did he pick 9 minutes in? It was oddly specific, but yeah, 10 hours later.
He's hyperbolic. He says things sometimes. He got it done. We got out. I remember looking at, as we're waiting, inauguration speech. Okay, the next thing. He kind of teased it a couple times, and we're just like, do something, And but we knew he would. A reporter reached out to my wife that she'd done an interview with a while back from Atlantic Magazine, and she goes, your husband just got pardoned. Isn't that great? She goes, yeah. Are you going to go get him? No, I'm already here in Missouri. And she's like, well, how'd you know? Did they tell you he was going to do it? No. But, we believed what he said. He was going to do what he said. She's like, well, okay. And she's like, I already got a plane ticket for him to go home. And she's like, but you didn't know he was going to do it? No, he's going to do what he says. That's what is great about Donald Trump. And then she's like, when did you buy the plane tickets? 3 weeks ago. And she's like, what? And she's like, didn't you think he would do it? She said, well, politicians say things all the time and don't do it. And my wife reminded her, Trump's not a politician. The thing we love about Donald Trump is he said something so outlandish like build a wall. And people were like, oh, sure, that just means he's going to get the policies and close the border. But, we're not always going to build a wall. No, he built a wall, right? He actually does the hard things. He'll do everything he can to move heaven and earth to do what he says he's going to do and keep his promises to the American people, unlike any politician we have ever seen since maybe George Washington, right? It's an incredible thing with Donald Trump that he's going to do everything he can to keep his promises. And when he doesn't, everybody sees why. It's because John McCain put his thumb down, right? It's not because of anything Trump couldn't do. And so it's just so incredible to watch that man operate. He is a lesson in courage and perseverance. Any accolade that you could give. My wife said to the reporter, she said, she's from DC. She goes, and by the way, her partner was on my jury. That's how they got to know each other. So her partner was on my jury and said that she actually felt bad about convicting me. So anyways, she said to this reporter, she goes, Donald Trump might not be who you think he is. He's not the bad guy. He's filled with compassion and all kinds of things, and he's trying to do the right thing for America. And, you've really got to step back and look at what America is, what she stands for, how she was founded. And when you understand that, you'll understand him.
I just really appreciate your testimony here tonight. I've been wondering so much about what your day-to-day experience is, and obviously we can go on for hours more, but I have one last question for you for tonight, Taylor, because I'd like to keep checking in with you and follow what you got going on, because you have a very strong voice. You're very well read. You're very articulate, and I think that you're going to, if you haven't already found new purpose, it's going to come to you very quickly. I know your wife has already found purpose in your time away with her organization and all that, but I guess like the last thing I'll ask, and in closing here is, aside from soaking up your family and sleeping in your own bed, do you know what comes next for you? And I guess
Uh,
that
we don't know what comes next completely. We just today started a Give Send Go for me. It's givesendgo.com/TJ6, and we need a little bit of runway to just kind of, get by for the next few weeks even, and then I'm not 100% sure. The business that I ran before, we sold my truck, sold a lot of equipment and things like that. So it's going to be very difficult to just go back to that, let alone if I really want to. I'm very likely going to fire back up my podcast. My podcast was small; it was nothing like yours, Frank. I don't know if I told you this before, but I was a daily listener of your podcast.
yeah,
I
you
loved
did.
your podcast, and I loved Dark Delight with Tracy Beans. Absolutely love listening to you guys, and you and I probably agree on 95% of our opinions. So it was really, really awesome that Bryce put us in touch. Dream come true, really.
Absolutely.
But I'll probably do that. And it's not, for me, it was never monetary because I had a full-time thing. It was just peasants, like I would talk on the podcast like you would at a water cooler, or like I would around an electrical pole on a job site or something like that. And so but connecting the dots for people on politics and what's happening and how it affects our lives. So I'll probably do that. I don't know. I mean, I'll definitely be helping out with my wife's nonprofit. It is a nonprofit. There's not a lot of money in it. But
it's a good problem to have, though, Taylor. I mean, you talk about, I mean, anybody that could empathize with your situation, or you think about movies, you think about something like Castaway, or It's a Wonderful Life, where somebody gets a second chance, or it's such low probability. You think that, I don't know, where all of a sudden you have a second chance at life and you're breathing free air, and it makes all of the problems, like, how am I going to pay the phone bill, which for most of us is a very troubling prospect if we don't have the money. But after you come from a situation like you were separated from family, I mean, it's even like having a really bad health scare or something like that. Once you get a clean bill of health, or you realize that something isn't as bad as you were fearful it was, it gives you you're actually comfortable in being in certain uncomfortable situations, because you see how small they compare to other things and how bad it can get,
I got to tell you something. So as we're getting out, there's community members that are trying to coordinate places for us to stay and rides if we need them and stuff like that. And the community members that were helping out us and our wife and put us up for the last 2 nights in a hotel, basically, they were like, we put it in someone else's name so that nobody can find you, and we want to make sure you have good security, and make sure don't go into town at night because it's late at night. You might want to wait. And I'm thinking, I just got done doing a federal bid. You think I'm afraid? You know what? I faced up against Aryan Brotherhood and I've seen a race riot. Like, I ain't worried about no one coming up to me. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, that's the last thing I'm worried about at this point. I just survived federal prison.
Right. No, I know. Listen,
So it is really interesting, because all those little tedious things, it's like, okay, I got to get back to it. But it is like, I'd be happy right now in a cardboard box with my kids.
I know you would. I know you would.
It really does put things in perspective on what you do have to lose. And it also puts a lot of fight in you to say, listen, everybody has all of this to lose. We have to, as a society, do better. And I'm just couldn't be more grateful to the American people for making the right decision. I couldn't be, more grateful to the J6 community that stuck with us this entire time. And I couldn't be more grateful to people like you who covered these stories and put out the counter narrative to what was going on mainstream news. It drove me absolutely crazy when you'd see even friendly conservative press consenting to things like the attack on the Capitol and violence, and using all these buzzwords.
Yep.
It's like, you're not trying to get to the bottom of the story. You're just hitting talking points. We're real people. There was I really appreciated when people stood up and just tried to correct the record. No cops died that day. Right. And that is something that really almost took 3 years for and still to this day, some liberal media won't consent to the fact that no cops died that day, right? And it was people like you, people like Tracy Beams, and many others who really helped that counter narrative and that truth sink in. And I think that's what allowed a lot of people to move past January 6th as a big issue.
Well, Taylor, it's been fantastic. I don't know if I want to ask, but it you know what? Very quick question. No, I'm not going to ask you this. It's not.
No, ask it. You mentioned it, now you got to ask.
All right, fine. Did any of the prisoners talk about class action lawsuits, any course of action, wrongful imprisonment, the way that you guys were? Many people were we got fed horrific stories about medical neglect, about the behavior of what you described in the courtroom, the collusion between prosecutors and judges. There was constitutional violations, civil rights violations all over the place. So, I mean, did you guys discuss as a group?
There are two answers to that. The first answer is yes, there are some lawsuits that are in the works that other people are working on. And I'm very hopeful that those will help vindicate some of our rights and to help to. I don't know about monetary. It's hardly even a thought in my mind right now, but I'm sure that there will be some lawsuits to try to put on the record some of the injustices that happened to the J6ers. And it's big things like what happened in the DC prison. I was there, spent quite a bit of time there. And I was there in one of the better phases of it, and it was horrendous. Some of the stuff that they were doing to us and around us. I mean, they just did even little things like, they just turned on the video visits finally for where the inmates used to be. They video visits for everybody else in the jail, but not for us and our families. You know, things as ticky-tacky as that, to where I was housed in Missouri, they wouldn't allow us to live together. They were treating us like we were some kind of mafioso or cartel members that couldn't be, or gang members that couldn't be housed together. We were able to kind of remedy that through some perseverance on our end to try to get housed together so we could keep an eye on each other. But, and they wouldn't allow, like I was held in a security level higher than what I was supposed to be. And that was happening across the board. So a lot of that stuff I think will be remedied in a handful of civil lawsuits, and especially some of the atrocious things that happen as far as denial of medical care and things like that. But on another level, many of the things that happen to us happen to others as well. The jail and prison systems inside the United States of America are very loosey-goosey. There's not a lot of accountability, and there's some powerful guard unions and things like that, and even the guards know this, right? And so a lot of the things that happen to us only happen to us because they had been doing similar things to others and went unchecked. So why would they think it would be different with us? Mm-hmm. Right. And so even though they kind of heaped on some of those things, some of the things we experience, like diesel therapy, management variables and stuff like that, it happens to other people as well. And so I hope that the January 6th and anything that happens with those lawsuits serves as a template for massive prison and jail reform. It really has to happen. What's going on inside of the prisons and jails, we are not rehabilitating or reconciling those members of society with society. We're making them bitter, and we're making them angry, and we're making them hate law enforcement because the abuses get worse as you go through the system, right? And so I really think that through our experience that some of those civil rights violations, it wasn't just us, it's others as well. And so what we can do is, as a group, is serve as a template to then be able to go in and do further reforms. And it's critically important for the future of this country. 1 in 28 children has an incarcerated parent. In 2007, Yahoo News reported that 1 in 31 Americans were currently under the jurisdiction of the Department of Corrections. 1 out of every 3 black men in America has a felony conviction. These are unacceptable statistics for a society that's founded on liberty and freedom, right? We have the highest per capita and per volume prison population in the United States, in the world. And these are things that need to kind of come to the forefront of how we move forward as society. We can't leave these massive amounts of people, families, and communities that are affected by it. And so there were some unbelievable injustices that are unique to January 6th. In my opinion, it's because they heaped on all of the injustices kind of on our group.
Yeah.
But those injustices only happened because the American people consented to it happening to the minority communities that have been affected by this, and on and on and on. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, the big picture, the 30,000-foot view on this is that January 6th was very much so an extenuating circumstance, something that needed to be done in order to actually enshrine the real insurrection. I'm sure. I don't know if you guys even had a chance to read this behind bars in prison, but the Time magazine efforts to explain how the election was fortified.
No, that came out in early 2021. Yeah, the Election Integrity Project. Absolutely.
Oh,
and,
man.
And by the way, a lot of those people that were involved with that are now behind Trump, because what happened was they gave power to a group of people that turned around and then tried to use that power against them to enforce censorship and to do lawsuits and things like that. I think that's why the Zuckerbergs and the Jeff Bezos and Tim Cooks have come around full circle, because they were like, wow, we really empowered some people that took that power and they went to their heads.
Yeah.
So I you can't take away what they did, but I'm sure glad to see them changing their tune, and trust but verify. We'll see what they do, but I think there's a resurgence in America right now to let freedom ring.
Taylor, have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Have a wonderful rest of the week. We'll be in touch, but enjoy your family and enjoy the free air, and anything that we can do, let us know. Real quick, give us all of the URLs that we should know about: your Give, Send, Go, your GoFundMe, your wife's nonprofit for children with incarcerated parents. Let everybody know what's out there. Go ahead.
Yes. So my wife's nonprofit is called Left Behind and Without, and you can find it at leftbehindandwithout.org. And then my Give, Send, Go is givesendgo.com/TJ6, or you can just go to Give, Send, Go and look up TJ6. That's my Taylor Johnatakis 6, TJ6.
TJ6.
And then I have, my wife maintained a website that has all these links and has a lot of my letters and things from prison and my essays, which I've been told are very moving and a really good place to go and kind of look at. It's peasantsperspective.com. So peasantsperspective.com, Give, Send, Go, TJ6, and leftbehindandwithout.org. And, I think those are all kind of interlinked as well.
Thank you so much, Taylor. I had a wonderful time with you tonight. I'm glad we were able to make it up, and more in the future. All the best to you, and keep in touch, please.
All right. Thank you so much, Frank.
All right. Take care. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we had a disappointing 7 minutes with him last night, and tonight, an hour. And I thought that, hey, a solid 30 minutes, fine. Now I don't know how we're going to do the rest of our topics, but who cares? We'll figure it out. I'm going to take a really, really short break. Wherever you are, don't go anywhere. It's going to be really, really short. We'll be back, and I want to hear a little bit from you. We're not even going to go to an intermission, just a short break to put a divider between then and now. And I'll go to your super chats, quite frankly, superchat.com. That's for all of you watching on YouTube. Until I make another appeal to see if we can get monetized again in 2024, because Jay Dyer was just able to do it, and maybe it's getting possible again. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, 2025, but it's since 2020. Quite frankly, superchat.com. Leave a comment to be read on air, a joke, a punchline, just saying hello, whatever the hell it is, support the show. That's a way to sponsor me for the evening. We will be right back.
What really happened on that Thursday here at Augusta High School that led to Chris Wood's death?
The fuck is that? Shit! I'm dying in this fucking country-ass fucked up town. Shit flying in my mouth. The fuck? I can't see pollen. Let's get the fuck out of this country, motherfucker. I can't even see me.
And then you see him eating in the morning. I've never seen. He's stuffing pancakes in his mouth like this. And I'm always telling my boy takes small bites, Farron, little tiny bites. And yesterday he said, Daddy, who's that guy on television? That's disgusting. Did you ever see? Then they talk about presidential. Oh, I see, he's president. He puts pancakes this big in his mouth and he's shoving them in. This is not a presidential person.
Now you look at Kasich. I don't think he knows what, did you see him? He has a news conference all the time when he's eating. I have never seen a human being eat in such a disgusting fashion. I'm always telling my young son, Barron, I'm saying, and I always with my kids, all of them, I'd say, children, small little bites, small. This guy takes a pancake and he's shoving in his mouth. It's disgusting. Do you want that for your president? I don't think so. I don't think so. Honestly, it's disgusting. You ever see it? He's eating today, stuffing it. I never saw bites this big. He's pushing it in with his... I never saw a guy eat like this. I told my son, he was watching. He said, Daddy, look. I said, don't watch. Little bites, little bites.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what the hell do I do? That was great. Oh, here's a couple of things I can show you. You want to talk about snow from down south? The deep south. Around the Gulf of America. This one is from Kenneth. Kenneth Jones sent me this picture from the St. Louis Cathedral. Look at that wonderful wintry sight. St. Louis Cathedral, Louisiana. This is from Kelly in Louisiana. Sent me a wonderful picture, just a really breathtaking picture of not only a beautiful winter sunset, but also her septic tank. Oh, I'm in front of the septic tank. There. Oh, there you go. There's Kelly's septic tank. Oh boy, I should have left myself up there, Kelly, huh? And here's another one. This is from Sarah. This is from Sarah in Louisiana. Take a listen to Sarah. Do a little jingle for everybody.
Quite frankly, from snowy Louisiana.
Absolutely, with her Quite Frankly Elevation Blend coffee. That's one hell of a time to have coffee when it's cold and snowy in Louisiana. While we get our Parmesan cheese coating over here in New York. Just can't win. Just can't win. What was the most intriguing part about Taylor's story to you? We could have kept going. But his taking time out to really heap praise onto Chinese Americans, that's incredible. That really gave me pause. I mean, the whole thing, you really consider, and I know that this audience and audiences like this, we do consider those things that were going on in 2024 for as roller coaster as it was, for as unsure as it was, for as much, how many people were nervous about, what comes next and, what lay ahead. We were still able to leave the house every day and go down to the bodega and pick up a gallon of milk without asking the warden, you think about how much was really on the line. And I know we reflected on that. So it's really an incredible story. Here's another incredible story. You talk about pardons, and at least this will help me check off the second part in my title tonight. Then we'll get to the super chats and we'll open up the lines for some calls from you guys. But here is from Cointelegraph. Trump pardons Silk Road creator Ross Ulbricht. U.S. President Donald Trump has followed through on his promise to pardon Ross Ulbricht, the founder of the online drug market Silk Road, who was imprisoned for over a decade. Very interesting, the campaigning over the last decade or so to get Ross out. Quote, I just called the mother of Ross William Ulbricht to let her know that in honor of her and the libertarian movement which supported me so strongly, it was my pleasure to have just signed a full and unconditional pardon of her son, Ross. The president added that Ulbricht's sentence of 40 years plus 2 life sentences was ridiculous. He said the scum that worked to convict him were some of the same lunatics who were involved in modern-day weaponization of government against me. He was given 2 life sentences plus 40 years. Ridiculous. Now, Ulbricht was arrested in 2013 and sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole in 2015 for his role in the operation and creation of the Silk Road. Freeing Ulbricht was one of Trump's many promises to the crypto community during his presidential campaign, with the businessman pledging to pardon the Silk Road founder on his first day in office if reelected. Several Bitcoiners had earlier expressed frustration with Trump for not following through on his promise to pardon Ulbricht on January 20th. Trump instead pardoned around 1,500 people involved with the U.S. Capitol attack on January 6, 2021. So even Cointelegraph is using attack. I guess it was an attack. The real question is who was doing the attacking and who was just cannon fodder. U.S. Senator Rand Paul had also called on Trump to pardon Ulbricht in January 21st letter, just hours before the president announced the pardon. Paul noted that Ulbricht, whose online black marketplace used Bitcoin for payments, received a far harsher sentence than many users, such as Matthew Varon Jones, who ranked in the top 5% of drug dealers on the site and received 6 years in jail. Some reports previously suggested that Trump was sympathetic to the Free Ross campaign and had considered clemency for the Silk Road founder in 2020. Why did Bitcoin supporters advocate for Ulbricht's release? The crypto community has long called for Ulbricht's release for various reasons. Some question Ulbricht's key role in Silk Road, arguing that he didn't deserve to die in prison for contributing to a marketplace where users could freely exchange goods, both legal and illegal. Others called him a Bitcoin legend due to his early contribution to the Bitcoin market. While Ulbricht did not deny his involvement in Silk Road operations, he repeatedly contested allegations that he was the sole person in charge or the original creator. Here's the quote, I didn't start Silk Road, my predecessor did. From what I understand, it was an original idea to combine Bitcoin and Tor to create an anonymous market. Everything was in place. He just put the pieces together. He told Forbes in an interview in 2013. So the real question here is, what do you think the motivation really? I mean, it's interesting because if someone sends a Venmo to a prostitute after a booty call in a motel in Bronx, New York, who gets in trouble? Is the motel liable for providing 2 adults a bed? Is Venmo liable for facilitating a sexual transaction? I don't know. Then again, to be fair, we often come down on Facebook for turning a blind eye to illegal activity that has been able to flourish economically on their platform. But with Facebook, it's all public. It's all there. Then, of course, you have this this marketplace that was designed to be completely private and really accentuating anonymity, and that's it. Blockchain technology, all that stuff. So what do you think? Trump has intimated at times that he would love to see the Philippines, like Philippine-style executions for drug dealers in the United States. So there are a few people out there who think that this is more about paving the way for more leeway for blockchain technology, this and that. But on top of all of that, 2 life sentences plus 40, regardless of what you think about the actual platform and how it's being funded and how people transact and that is just absolutely ridiculous. But this is what we see a lot in our system. We're just talking to a guy tonight who had teams. What Taylor was describing was teams of people working at the DOJ who were putting all of their mental and spiritual energies in figuring out how they can give people who they knew did not deserve to be going to jail for that long, even more time, because it was all about sending a message. You don't have to open up the book and find ways to redefining a bike lock or a lamppost. You're trying to redefine inanimate objects on the Capitol on the canvas, the campus there. Just for what? Because there is a intent. That was their intent. It's just really, that was sickening, that description of how prosecutors and judges they were going to make this work. Like, watch me work here. It wasn't about seeing what was being presented. It was about move aside. Doesn't matter what your case is. You need to go to jail, and we're going to find ways of making it happen. That's insane. Absolute insane. So let me see here. We're going to open up the lines. We got 25 minutes until the end of the show. So as far as the Project Stargate, I was going to talk about this on Friday night with Jay Gulanello anyway, because there is a major healthcare pharmaceutical aspect to this, aside from the AI aspect where, your AI gridding everything out and there's censorship and surveillance. It goes against so much, including Make America Healthy Again. When you hear all of the rantings of Larry Ellison talking about how Project Stargate, and again, why the name? Why Stargate investment? Why are we talking about getting AI to diagnose disease, which is fine, because honestly, I don't care about having any kind of systems that we control that has been confined to assisting doctors in actually making far more accurate diagnoses and actually being able to plot treatment, to do calculations and maybe conduct experiments faster than as long as we're behind the reins of it. And there's not, something, I don't care. I just want people to stop dying for shit that we have been falling behind on, prioritizing other things, or putting, when I should say prioritizing other things, chief among them is prioritizing the profits of big pharma to just string people along instead of, digging deeper into nature to figure out how we can actually make people healthy again, and how we can stimulate the body to do what it's designed to do, which is to keep people healthy in a state of homeostasis. How do you do that? Everything I'm getting out of this Stargate shit seems to be in complete contravention, and I would say interferes and contradicts Maha. So on Friday night, you definitely have to get a little bit on that. And Jay, if we do the whole thing that night, then maybe I'll just push Antarctica to next Friday, because it's not like it's going anywhere. And so let's go get some of your people on air, and I'll change up the title later on. We'll do Stargate on Friday with Jay there in tow. 914-200-0269. It's a Wednesday night and it is cold. What did you think about tonight? Give me everything you got. 914-200-0269. Thank you, Jay Britt says, God bless Taylor and his family. Thanks for that, Frank. You're welcome. And thank you, Taylor, for coming on. I'm glad we were able to do whatever little we can. And yes, that is right. In some court document out there in Washington, D.C., Quite Frankly.tv is in the evidence. It's in an evidence file that they use to try to absolutely railroad an American citizen. Not exactly a feather in the cap, by any means. That's one shout out that never got me one viewer. Can you imagine the prosecutor watches this show now? If you're watching, fuck you. You're a useless piece of shit. You watching? He's going to be on that show again tonight. You useless piece of shit. Anyway, let's take a call, shall we? 479, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Frank, this is Shampoo in North Arkansas. Hey, I'm glad to catch your show. I've been listening for like 3 years, but never catch the lives. I'm just always working and doing things at night.
Well, that's all right. That's why I always say I love the live audience, but I always, whenever I'm doing the show, I'm always thinking about people like you who just press play whenever it's most convenient. I try to make you part of the live audience too.
No doubt, no doubt. Great show. I had a funny January 6th story. I'm a social work student at the University of Arkansas, and I had a professor that she's a sweet lady. She's like a middle-aged black lady, and she was telling the class about how when the whole January 6th thing popped off, she got so scared that white supremacists were taking over the American government that she packed up all of her things, left Arkansas, and drove back to St. Louis to be with her family.
Oh, God. Yeah. Listen, it's we laugh. It's not funny for the people who actually. I mean, she believed that to be true. I mean, and you said she was a teacher.
She's a university professor,
So unfortunate.
Like a social sciences PhD type, CNN brainwash.
Yeah, so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate that they're in a position to actually pass any kind of information along to young Americans, because you can see the lens through which they see the world and who they take as authoritative sources for anything. It's not, you know that they're not delivering a very good, wholesome product to anybody.
No, they're not. No, I remember a few times I shared some things like some Whitney Webb podcasts with her and stuff. I would like email them to her because, it's an academic environment, so everything's got to be well researched and stuff. And I figured that was like, how Whitney gets down. So I figured that was like something to kind of, give her something maybe to make her think about some of these things. But yeah, I mean, my whole thing for the social work thing is, I care about people. I've been through a lot myself, and I think in the social work field there needs to be some people besides like liberal white women, that can help some of these people that are down bad.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Perhaps if the endless flow of financial assistance from the federal government stops, they'll be a little bit more. Prone to prioritizing a good quality education instead of just coasting on what they know is just going to be there. Thanks for the call, man.
Let us pray, man. Have a good one, man. Peace.
All the best to you. I hope I hear from you more in 2025. Really do. Yeah, that'd be great. If everybody's lifeline, the welfare, goes away, and then suddenly you actually have to consider a quality product that is not just bunch of liberal white women crying into their Cheerios every morning in the PTA room, or the faculty room, I should say. Oh, man. I mean, I almost went back to their family, make sure everybody's safe. The white supremacists are coming. Oh, my gosh, how pathetic. But at the same time, somebody made them that way. If you don't laugh, what are you going to do? 904, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Oh, Frank, GDSOB.
Oh, Kamanuch, how you doing?
Ciao bello, come stai? Tutto bene?
Yeah, meds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to say, man, I tried to get in on the inauguration show that y'all had. Couldn't do it. There were just so many people calling, and I totally get it. But what a monumental night to be able to call in. The night you had Taylor on. God bless him and his family. God bless him and all the other J6ers that are free now and can breathe a collective sigh of relief.
Oh yeah, especially those who were still living their lives, looking over their shoulders. They were, they made it known over the last 2 years leading up to the 2024 election that there were still a couple of thousand people that they were hunting down. And they were, so that was only going to continue to expand because they needed this storyline to continue to gain importance with people, though it was not. Nobody was watching the January 6th committee hearings. It was the lowest rating scam that they ever pulled off, but they had a bunch of psycho judges and prosecutors that was willing to push the limit, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope Taylor and everyone else involved, I hope they're able to obviously sue for some type of monetary damages. I mean, PTSD, pain and suffering, restitution, all of these people that did this to those guys and women, they all need to suffer, and they need to be, unfortunately, they should be put under the jail, but we can't do that in a legal and humane society. So,
Well, I think there's a lot of people who have various thoughts that are probably related to yours, no doubt about it. And I'm just happy I'm happy you got through. Yeah, it was a big night of calls on Monday, but it's all right because here you are. Hey, did you get any snow? Because you still live in Florida, don't you?
Yeah. We got little tiny flurries over here in Duval, but we didn't really get anything that stuck.
Man, I saw it. I saw some by the Panhandle that like under a foot of it.
Yeah, they got obliterated over there.
Damn. Well, either way, man, it's good to hear you, and I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I hear from you soon.
Absolutely. And one more thing, God bless you and yours. A little shout out to Aurora. I hate this show.
All right, man. A presto.
Ciao, bello. Ci vediamo.
Okay. There we go. Let's see. A little bit more. Let me make sure that I don't miss any of these. Let's see. Over on Rumble, we got a nice group of people over there on Rumble hanging out. Do we have any Rumble ranters? We have one. Come on, Rumble. I can read your rants on air, and you have become a formidable, if not on many nights, the biggest audience out of all of the platforms that we're live on simultaneously. Show your presence here. Jay Semo says, great show, very emotional. What has become of our country? Hopefully things will get better. I believe that they have already. Now, where we go and how much of our hopes we can invest in the system to continue making things better, remember, limit that expectation. Take the good when we get it, call out the bad, and just be on a case-to-case basis. Call the balls and strikes with me to the best of our ability. But other than that, again, Taylor's story revealed a lot of really amazing civilian-level truths. I mean, think about that. That is really what this is all about. Obviously, Donald Trump is a central figure in all this, and it makes him a very great American figure for his time. All right? It is a gravity well, okay? It is central to all of the stories that we're talking about and following in the last 10 years to one way or another. But again, what was the most important takeaways from Taylor's stories from me? The talking inside, the different types of people, what they're all seeing, the Mexican prisoner who was facing deportation, what he felt about Mexico, and what he wished a Donald Trump could do for his own home country. What it all means, why everybody is where they are. Now, those are all stories of people, little people, the only ones that matter, and their actions and what motivates those actions, and what are people starting to see and how they starting to interpret the events that are going on around them. That's something else. Miss Maniac on Rumble says, it's my propane tank for my heater, not my septic tank, Frank. Oh, sorry. Oh, man. Anyway, well, it looked like a septic tank to me. It's okay. It looked like the submarine that they went down to see the Titanic and got crushed in. So, let me see. All right. Yeah, we're going to save Stargate for Friday. It'll be a juicy topic. I'm going to keep all of these bookmarked. Let's take a call. Donald, you're on the air.
Hey, Frank. How you doing?
I'm all right. How you been?
I'm pretty good. This is Don from Excelsior,
It's
Minnesota.
great to have you on from Minnesota. Hey, how cold is it over there right now?
Well, we got up to 27 today after being 20 below on yesterday.
Oh, so then you're warmer than we are today. Good for you. So what's on your mind?
Yeah, well, first I want to say on the snow side, we only got 8 inches here so far, so we're in the same boat as you. We just got like an inch on the ground.
Strange.
Yeah, it's really a weird winter. But my mom's in Panama City Beach, Florida. She just got 4 inches of snow. Sent me pictures of her on the beach with snow.
She probably thought that she was done with that shit living in Panama City.
Yeah, no doubt. But anyway, so what I wanted to say is, so yeah, the whole Taylor thing was absolutely awesome. It was tear jerking, and maddening at the same time. But it's just, why don't people realize that laws are to deter things, right? And so can't people see that these laws are being used to deter things, but they're just regular everyday things that people do.
Right.
And I don't understand why people can't see that. But anyway, so that's my 2 cents for the day.
Well, what's the most infuriating is that laws are there to try to give society order. And you'd hope to try to give society order that puts a little bit of a barrier between people and the bad intent of those who might live among them. Now, the balance there is, how does everybody maintain their own their liberty, their autonomy in a marketplace, all their civil rights and all that other stuff, while making sure that there is some level of enforcement to make sure that there's no aggressive action between parties that aren't consenting to work together, some kind of fraud or harassment or whatever the hell it is. That's the whole thing there. And then, of course, you hope that it is a commonly held belief that these laws have to be stringently applied across all levels and all areas in society. And what we know now is that, aside from living with, it's sick as far as the level of laws that we live under. But there's no real even application of the law, and there is just nobody there that goes on with impunity. I mean, that in itself, there's nobody being held to account for misapplying the law to just some and not others, and it's all in very politically biased ways. So the whole thing is it's really, really bad. And I'd say that we have to start stripping away and deregulating and starting from the beginning and making sure that real criminals are held to account. Because I mean, if there is no real enforcement of the law to the highest degrees, then there really is not going to be that much deterrence there. I mean, like you said before, they do act as a deterrent, or at least they're set up for that, so that everybody can see this is what happens when you try to defraud your neighbors, or you try to steal an election, or you sell influence and you trade your country away for something else. It's a big problem.
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyways, love your show. Just wanted to throw that in there, and big shout out to One Way Mel too while I'm on it.
Oh, thank you so much, and all the shout out to One Way Mel, fellow Minnesotan, I think. Let me see here. Where's Battlefield? Let me see here for a second. Battlefield America, John Whitehead. This is a little bit older now, with a forward by Ron Paul. Let me see. There's something in the beginning here that I think is pretty stark. Let me see. That's the forward. Give me a moment. It's got to be somewhere in here. Here you go. It's the opening pages. It's page 3. It's the reality check. Battlefield America by John Whitehead. He's been on this show a couple of times. I should bring him back. Fact, and this was published back in when? First edition, 2015. Today, 17,000 local police forces are equipped with such military equipment as Black Hawk helicopters, machine guns, grenade launchers, battering rams, explosives, chemical sprays, body armor, night vision, repelling gear, armored vehicles. Some have tanks. Paul Craig Roberts, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. Here's a second fact for you. Thanks to an overabundance of 4,500 plus federal crimes and 400,000 plus rules and regulations, and this is 2015. 4,500 plus federal crimes and 400,000 plus rules and regulations. It is estimated that the average American actually commits 3 felonies a day without ever knowing it. In fact, according to law professor John Baker, there is no one in the United States over the age of 18 who cannot be indicted for some federal crime. That is not an exaggeration, end quote. It's a pretty dark book. That's only page 3. But you think about that. You think about how the cards are stacked against us. You know? That's just ridiculous. So if the Eye of Sauron settles on you, God knows what they can pull up on you. God knows. All right, 8:56. Let me make sure that I got everybody. Quite Frankly.tv, the Gold Pillars. C. Blanche sends a cookie. Thank you so much. I had a friend of mine, my neighbor. My neighbor, it's part of my Christmas gift to the house. Son of a bitch gave me a gigantic party size package of Chips Ahoy cookies. And you know how damaging that has been? I don't eat after 5. There's only been like maybe 5 days in the last 7 months that I have splurged and eaten after, like 5:30 p.m. Been pretty good. And it's paid off very, very well. But my neighbor gave me a gigantic party size thing of Chips Ahoy because I said that's what I envisioned. People sending me cookies in the gold pills over there on quitefrankly.tv through pilled.net. So I've been dealing with that. During the day, I'll take 1 here, take 2 there. What am I going to do? Throw them out? Damn it. Every time I go for a broken chip, because, many of them were kind of cracked, so I'll pick up like a quarter of a cookie. And Aurora has now gotten to a point where she threatens to tell Jay Gulinello on me. And she threatens Lauren, too. If we eat anything, even if it's good, she just likes to tease us. I'm going to tell Jay Gulinello on you. Or Jay, she's just learning how to say Gulinello. She calls him Jay the nutritionist. And I think she actually thought that his last name is the nutritionist. We had to explain to her that was his profession. But now she's in a mode where she wants to tattletale on us anytime we have a cookie and have some light enjoyment in life. But anyway, thank you so much, C. Blanche. And thank you to my next door neighbor, Jeff. Red Rooster, thank you. 3-month bronze tier subscription on Pilled. That means you're part of all of the super chat. All of the book clubs. The film club is coming up in November. We have 1 more book club session next week on Monday. And then in February, it's going to be our first film club ever. Okay, so it's going to be the 3rd Monday of the film club month. We're going to get together just like book club and talk about the film. This month it's going to be Interstellar. It's the first time I've ever watching it. I also will talk about this tomorrow night. I heard that Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio have revived their plans to produce a film for Devil in the White City. For all of you who were there with us 2 Augusts ago, August 2023, with Lindsay Sharman, when we read that movie, read that book, that's going to be a great movie. All around the 1893 World's Fair, H.H. Holmes slaughtering people in his murder castle in Chicago. I wonder how they're going to do it. I'll definitely be watching that one. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. I just saw the news this afternoon. Doug Simmy, thank you so much. CB Joey says, praying for you, your J6 brothers and sisters, and your families, Taylor. May God bless you all. Robert Sarnes, thank you. Stowstube. Stephen and Lori says, fantastic show. Love the interview and the calls. Thank you. Thank you. Stowstube sent several sleeves of cookies. So there you have it. Then Witchy Poo with their own sleeve of cookies. All Chips Ahoy. I'm drowning in it over here. Swickly says, I saw last night that Donald J. Trump was going to North Carolina, and it finally hit me. Cried like a baby. God bless America. And then Witchy Poo ends it all with 7 more cookies. I appreciate you guys all so much for the support tonight and the companionship. Tomorrow I have to do some business at the studio, but listen, there is still a very good chance that when I'm done moving things in to the studio, there is we're getting some new furniture over there by way of an office that is vacating. Someone I know is moving out of their office, and they said, hey, do you need some furniture? It was really good. It's in really good shape. And we need to get rid of those terrible couches at the studio. Not the guest couch. I love that green amoeba couch. But in the green room, oh, they're just so old. They were they served us well. But I have to get those replaced tomorrow. That's around 6:30. That'll probably lead me to about 8. I may just go live from my phone on YouTube or something else like that. So just keep your notifications on. Maybe I'll go do some Twitch or something like that. You guys are great. After hours tonight. Here's what's going on Quite Frankly.tv as soon as we end here in a few moments. I think you're all really going to enjoy it. This is by way of John Carroll. We got Timothy Alberino with Randall Carlson, the Ice Age Comet Cataclysm. They've linked up. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Modrika, creepy TikToks that have my brain working overtime. And then an Art Bell kicker, Art Bell with Butch Wilkowski. Human mutilations and the abduction phenomena. That's all on quitefrankly.tv. It is a nice, cold winter night and nice, cold winter night content that you can talk to about with other people in the chat room while you sip your coffee or your tea or whatever the hell's going on. Enjoy yourself, and thank you so much for the calls and everything else. You've been wonderful. Good night. I'll see you on Friday for the next full show with Jay Gulinello and hopefully Matt there too. But you never know. All right, everybody. One last look elsewhere. And Joey Poop Bag. Thank you, Joey Poop Bag on Rumble, who said that Rumble chatters are, the Rumble chat is full of stingy people, stingy Jews. That's what he said. He's trying to see if I'd say it. Well, that's what he said. Joey Poop Bag. So if you don't want to be considered a stingy Jew, I guess support the show, according to Joey. Very, very. That's just not right. It's not a good thing to say. You can't say that in public. All right, everybody. If I'm here tomorrow, I hope I am. I'll talk to you soon. Good night.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
Quite Frankly is filmed before a live studio audience, and now our super chatters, starting with Jay Britz and just our wonderful gold pillars on quitefrankly.tv, and thank you to everybody else over there on Rumble and also on D-Live. I'll be emptying out the D-Live treasure chest as well in just a moment. Get over to quitefrankly.tv, become a sponsor on quitefrankly.tv while you're there. You can click on the Sponsor Us tab and find the 4 main ways to become a monthly sponsor that opens you up to an entire universe of exclusive content that really is an extension of the nightly show. It is so fun, and I hope you become a part of it. Good night.